Hello, it's Yvonne from the Fabric Hut. Welcome to my sewing room. Today we are working on this delightful block. It's called Goose in the Pond. We are going to be making, um, we're going to do some strip piecing with this right here. We're going to make some flying geese. Um, and then I'm going to show you a way to web it all together so you don't get anything turned. So let's jump over to my sewing machine and get started. The Goose in the Pond block is so much fun. This is a block that I believe the history starts back in the mid 19th century. This is actually one of the blocks that was used in the Underground Railroad, telling people where to find safety and help and whatnot. So this is a very old but very traditional block. It's called Goose in the Pond because this section here is supposed to be your pond and these are your geese flying over it. Lots of different ways it was made. Sometimes this center block was much larger and then this. So it varies by quilter. I saw one article about a group of ladies who made this, and some of the gals didn't get the size right. So in order to put them all into one quilt, on some of the blocks, they had little sawtooth borders around on two sides of them to bring them up to the same size. So very versatile block, lots of fun. We're going to make it. My sample was made with the dark brown, the red, and the cream. I'm going to use light brown for this sample, and we are going to get going right now. So I'm going to set aside our strips for just a moment and our little squares. We are going to start with 6 each this is the Fizzy Pop, and this is just a cream that I had in my stash. These squares are 4 1/4 inch, and we're going to start by making our half square triangles 2 at a time. Let me show you the reason why. I'm going to go back to the block for just a second. This is why we're going to do them 2 at a time. If we could do them 4 at a time, we need 12 of them. We could do them 4 at a time, but if we did, we would have bias edges here on the corner. And you know my rule, no bias edges on the corner if at all possible. So that takes away those. 8 at a time would be lovely, except I wanted to use the Fizzy Pop, and all I had were charm packs left, so I needed to go with the smaller pieces. So that's why I'm using doing them 2 at a time. You absolutely could do them 8 at a time if you wanted, depending on what fabric you have. So anyway, we're going to start by just drawing the lines diagonally across our 4 1/4 inch squares. You need 6 sets because you need 12 half square triangles. Okay, now as we start sewing, we are going to do a little bit of chain piecing, and I am going to include the strip piecing in the middle of what we're doing, just as a way to do things quicker. On the sample that I had made for myself, just making sure I had all my sizes proper, I actually sewed one of these wrong sides together, so I had to take it out and start over. Of course, I didn't figure it out until after I had cut it apart, but that still works just fine. You just have to patiently do it and make it happen. Okay. And 2 more. No, I cut a few extra squares than I need, but they'll go into my stash box. I have, when I get done with a quilt, I like to take all my extras and I cut them into standard sizes. So I can pull them out and use them for other things without having to cut. My standard size is, I do a 4 and I do a 4.5. So these would go into the 4 box, even though they are 4.25. So I can manipulate them down a little farther if I needed to. Okay, so we've got those done. And then I'm going to have these prepared at the same time. So what I need here is we're going to do strip piecing for these sections here. Okay, so this section with 2 whites and a red is the same here. White, red, white. So I need enough to do 4 of each of these, and then I need enough to do 8 of this section. So for the 8 that match, I need a white and 2 reds, and they need to be 13, 14 inches long, something like that. You're going to use, it's going to be exactly 12, so I like to cut them a little bit longer. So there's that one. And then for the pieces that have the longer piece in the middle, you need at least 22 inches. So, and it's going to go 2 whites and a red. So I'll start with the white one, and I'm going to sew with the red on top. Okay, so I have that one ready, I have that one ready, and I have all these ready. Let's get started. I'm going to change out my foot to do the 1/4 inch foot with no guide, because I am sewing on top of the fabric here versus on the side, so that little guide would just get in my way. You notice these aren't exactly the same size. That's okay, because at 4.25 you have a little bit of wiggle room, and so we will trim them down a little bit when we're done anyway. So here we go. I'm going to sew all the way down the left-hand side of all 6 of these, just real quickly. And then I'm going to feed these guys in. And the reason I'm going to do that is so that I don't have to cut my thread. I can just keep going. I can take these off the back, bring them around to the front after I've sewn these, and keep going. There we go. This block goes together really quickly after you get these first 2 preliminary steps done. You've got to get your half square triangles made, and you got to get your 9 patches made. After that, it goes together very, very quickly. And if you notice, it's not going to take us all that long to do these either. And one more down this side. Okay, so now instead of cutting and doing the other side, I'm going to just start on these. And remember, this one is the foot without the guide, so I am going to be a little cautious to make sure I keep it lined up exactly where I want it. I'm using the very edge of my foot, and I'm using a mark out here. Because these 9 patches are not going to be trimmed down, so we do want to make sure we have some good accuracy with them. Okay, and the long one. And there we go. I'm having a lot of fun finding these classic blocks for you and doing a little research on where they came from. I've always been very intrigued by vintage quilts and the story behind the different blocks. I have a number of books on them. I've made the Civil War quilt. When I find some time, I'm going to work on the Jane Austen quilt that has 200 plus quilts in or blocks in it. Okay, so see how I just pulled these off? I'm going to snip them apart and bring them around the front and sew up the other side real quickly. Nope, and I just threw one on the floor, of course, because that's what I do. Alrighty, so now I'm going to flip these around and just go up the other side of them. Just like that. So I'm not much of an art quilter. Some people have that creative bone that they can just be very, very artistic and do fabulous stuff. I'm more of a traditional quilter, I think. I will do some applique and I will do some, other techniques, but basically I think I am more of a traditional quilter because I love these old blocks. I love looking at a block that I've seen and figuring out how it goes together and recreating it. Whether I have a pattern or not, I just think that's so much fun. Okay, so we have those 6 done. We're going to bring this up now and get our strips again. And we have the long one and the short one. Let me snip that. There we go. Okay, with our long one, we need to add another cream color. These are all going to be pressed towards the red, so I'm just going to kind of give a little finger press towards the red. I'm not going to worry about taking it to the pressing station right now. Just give a little finger press so it holds it open for me to put this one on. Now, I am not going to start here and sew because if you remember, that was the way I sewed before, was the red on top. Now, if I did the white on top now and sew the same direction, this would tend to bend a little bit. So I'm going to flip it over and continue sewing with the red on top so that it is going the opposite direction of the seam I just sewed. Now I do have this one, got my magnet stuck a little long, so I'll trim off that little edge there, get it out of my way, and continue down the side of this one. Just like that. When I first began quilting, I didn't know what I was doing. And I started with a piece of graph paper, and this was back before the internet. I went to the library and checked out a book and just kind of saw a few things I liked and decided I'll just draw those out on graph paper and make them happen. And they actually turned out not too bad. So, you don't have to have a bunch of fancy supplies. You just have to have a little ingenuity and a little bit of time, and think things through. Thankfully, math is not a terribly hard thing for me, so I was able to figure out the measurements. Well, not on the first one. The first one I messed up pretty bad. But the second one I got better when I realized, oh yeah, you have to have a seam allowance on everything, not just on one. Those kind of mistakes that beginners make. Okay. There we go. We have now got most of the pieces ready. We are still going to have to turn some of these into a 9-patch unit, but that won't be difficult. So I am going to get these all trimmed apart. Okay. We will press these ones in a second. These guys we need to cut in half. You can take them to your cutting table and cut them in half, or you can just use your scissors and cut on the line. Doesn't matter which one. This is going to be in your seam allowance, so if it's not exactly even, it's not going to show. Not going to matter at all. It's just whether or not you want to get up and go to your cutting station. Since if I did that, I would have to rearrange my camera right now. I'm going to save that for in a little while when I need to. I'll do it all at once, but we're going to stay here. We're going to cut these apart, and then we're going to press them. Then we'll go over to my cutting table, and I will show you how to trim these up and how to cut your strips down into the right sizes for your 9 patches and your bar blocks. By bar block, I mean those inner blocks that have 3 strips. I call those little bars. I don't know what they're really supposed to be called. I call them bar blocks. That's another fun thing is you will find out when you go looking for a block, you will think it's called one thing, but then when you go searching, it's called something else. When I first looked up Goose in the Pond, it told me that it was a flying goose block. Well, it looks like flying geese or geese flying over the pond, but it wasn't necessarily a flying goose block. So, okay, so we're going to press these guys. Let me see, did I even turn my iron on? I did not, but that's okay. By the time we get them finger pressed, it'll be ready to go. Get my pressing mat up here. Okay, remember this is a bias seam. It's stretchy, so we want to make sure that we don't stretch our bias seam. Finger press it, especially on a bias seam. A finger press is really a nice thing to do. You can set your seam and then give it a little finger press. Okay. And then remember, we're going to start and we want to go with the grain of the fabric, not with the angle of the seam. So we're going to put it here and just go straight up with the grain of the fabric. That's why that little finger press is so important. Do that again. Set your seam. Give it a little finger press. If you can get your hands to work without stretching it. And then up the straight of grain. There we go. So I will continue pressing all these out. And let's press these. In order for everything to come together properly, we want to press all of these towards the red. So I'm just going to, this is a straight of grain, so we can just roll up onto it. Press one side and then the other. I can get my mat to hold still for me. And I'm just kind of letting the nose of the iron press that seam up. I'm checking with my left hand that things are laying flat and then pressing it up. Then I will turn it around and do the same thing on the other side. Once I get both sides pressed up, if I can get it started here, there we go. Once I get both sides pressed up, I'll give a good press over the whole thing like that. So I'll get everybody pressed and I will meet you over at my cutting table. Okay, so I came over and I cut 3.5 inch bars here. 3.5. I cut 4 of those out of one strip. This was the longer strip. Got those. And then I also took the leftover of that long strip and I laid it on top of my other strip like this. My sound went out when I did this first time, so we're just going to walk through it. You're not going to actually see me cut. There we go. So I'm going to lay it like that, and then I'm going to cut these into 1.5 inch strips, and I need 4 pairs and 4 separates. And if you look, they just nest together really well because I pressed everything to the red. So this red fits right between those, and they are just nested perfectly. So now these are 3.5 by 1.5. I got pairs, and I have my 4 extras. So those are for that inner border. And then we had our half square triangles. Let me get my ruler. With the half square triangles, they were oversized. So we needed to cut them down. So you can do that with any square ruler. So this diagonal line needs to go right along the diagonal line of your half square triangle. And then you line it up on the 3.5-inch line and trim off 2 sides. Now, if this were not completely square, we would come in a little bit, do 2 sides, then turn it around, realign it, putting the 2 sides you just cut onto the ruler, and then cut the other 2. So we now have 12 of these and enough to make 4 9 patches and 4 bar blocks. So let's go back to the sewing machine and start putting this baby together. Okay, I have set aside all of my other pieces. We're just going to work on these 4 9 patch blocks right now. We're going to make sure they're still nested nicely. And I'm going to change to my 1/4-inch foot with the guide now because I'm not doing any more on top of the fabric sewing. Now it's all going to be along the edge. Okay, and we're just going to sew these little guys up, watching which direction our seams go. Re-nesting, because everything gets shifted walking across the room from the cutting table. There we go. 2, 3, and 4. It's so nice when you can just feel that little seam nest in there so well. That's what that perfect 1/4 inch gets you. Okay, so now I have all 4 of these. And again, I'm going to just finger press them. And I'm still pressing towards the red. There's only 1 red here, but 2 here, so we're going to go towards the red. Okay, and put the other red over here. And feel it nest together. And off we go. Oop, I think I just unthreaded my needle. Let's double check. Yeah, nope, I didn't. Okay, so I cut for no reason. You will get to where you can hear the sound of your sewing machine, and when something's not quite right, you will be able to stop and fix it before you go too far. The only thing I haven't learned to hear on this one is when my bobbin runs out. That would just be too nice to be able to hear that, because there's too often I will sew a whole side of a quilt with no bobbin thread because I can't tell the difference. Okay, there we go. Do the same thing here, finger press out the red. We'll get it with an iron when we're all done. Layer them up and go. Now I can feel this one's not quite nested, so I will adjust that as I come up to it. There we go. So I don't really worry about whether this seam is nested until I get to this seam. Because if you have to stretch one a little bit, if you stretch it now, it's going to pull this one out. So anchor that one. And then if you have to, which you shouldn't have to very often, but things happen. Maybe you didn't get it pressed all the way open, that kind of thing. It's real easy to adjust it after you hit this seam with your needle so that it doesn't get misaligned. Okay, now I have 4 9-patch blocks. And I just need to snip twice between them because I didn't snip them apart before. There we go. Get that long thread. I find if I keep up with the long threads now, I don't have to fight them later. Okay, there, look at that. Isn't that cute? I love 9-patch blocks. All right, I'm going to bring up my pressing and we'll get these guys pressed flat, and then we're going to start laying out our block. Okay, see how we finger press that one, so it's really laying quite flat, and we can just put this one on top. Let me get my hand the other direction so you can see better. There we go. The one we finger pressed is out, and just roll that one over. There we go. And just one more. I love it. I love it. Okay, now the fun starts. Here we have all of our pieces. Look at that. Everything we need to make this block. So first thing we need is a center right there. And then we have these 4 3.5-inch blocks that, oh, no, that's not, wait a minute. I put them in the wrong place. Yep, we're going to put on our these guys first. Okay, so these guys, and on these, you're always putting a white next to the center. You're not putting them this way. You want the white next to the center. Let me bring you out a little bit so you can see the whole block. There we go. You see how that goes? The lighter color towards the center, just like that. Okay, then we're going to put these in the corners. We're just building from the center out. All right, whoop, we're going to run out of space here, but that's okay. We can work under our needle a little bit. Okay, then on this one, these babies go right next to those. So you're having an extended white, so overlap your whites just a little bit, or your cream. I keep saying white, light. Maybe that's a better word for it, is lights. That turned the right direction. Right there, and one on top. And now we need to make all of our geese fly towards the pond. So you're doing 3 in each corner, and they all are going in the same direction towards the center. So all of your brown points are going to point towards the center. So on this side, we'll turn them 90 degrees and point them towards the center. Now, if you were doing a number of these blocks, I would still lay it out this way, but I would lay, if I were doing 8 blocks, I would lay all 8 of this patch right there, all 8 of this one, and then work off them that way. It will keep you from getting mixed up, but you can still chain piece them pretty quickly. Okay, and the last ones are going to go up in this corner like that. Now, there are 25 pieces here in this block. How are we going to keep them from getting twisted and turned while we are sewing our block? Well, there's a trick. We're going to start on the upper left-hand side, and we're going to take that block and stack it on the one below it. And just make a pile going from the top down, stacking the top one onto the bottom one all the way. And that's going to be stack 1. I'm going to set it off to the side. Then we're going to do stack 2, top one onto the second one, onto the third one, onto the fourth one, onto the fifth one, and set it aside. Then I'm going to start over here on this side, and I'm going to take the top to the second, to the third, to the fourth, to the fifth, and push it off to my right-hand side. Next row, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, also to my right-hand side. And the final one, keeping them all in the correct orientation, just like that. Okay, then I'm going to pick up my first 2 blocks. This is row 1 and row 2, and I'm going to put them right here in front of my machine. And I'm going to take row 2, the top one of row 2, flip it on top of row 1, and sew down the right-hand side of it. Then I'm going to take the top one of row 2, put it on the next one of row 1, and do the same thing. And keep building these blocks all the way down until I have a chain of 5 different blocks. 5 different pairs of blocks, I should say. Here we get to these, and I know it's white to white, so that's good. And here we go. Nope, I got that one ironed, pressed strong. I will repress that in a minute. I'm watching my seams so they're all going in the right direction. And then the final one right there. Okay, so now I have the first 2 rows hooked together. I'm going to take those out of my machine and bring them towards me again. I'm back up to the top. I'm going to open them out. I have row 1 and row 2. Remember, row 3 is right here. And take row 3, flip it over, and put it on. And the next one off of row 3. Pick it up, put it on, and sew it down. And I'm going to continue this for all 5 rows. And that way, they will all be hooked into one piece, separated by a little bit of thread in between each of them, because I'm not going to cut any of these threads between blocks. Okay, now see how this one's going to nest right in there. Make sure you have it nested nicely. Go all the way to there. Oh, I don't think that one's quite nested. Let me readjust. Oh, there we go. Get my finger out of the way. And then adjust this one. And the final one. And you know you have them right because there's no way to open them the wrong direction. They're hooked there. There's no way to open them wrong. So it makes it very accurate doing it this way. Okay, that's row 3. Now I could have gone and done row 2 or 4 and 5 together, then added them, but I get confused when I start doing that. So I'm just going to continue building and chain piecing them together just like this, all the way down through row 5. Okay, and when I get done with row 5, I'll come back and show you the next step. All right, it's time to start sewing them together, all of our rows together. We have them in 5 rows, hooked together by the little strings. I've already done a couple of them. Take and flip one over on top, and this is where you're going to check your directions of your seams. So looking here, this is how I started. Looking here, I looked at this and it's like I have a point here and I have a point here and I have a point there. So we want to go away from it as many points as we can. So I'm going to go here. We're going to flip towards the red there and it still works. Okay, but that's what I did on this end. And I went towards the red everywhere I could. And then when you do your next row, you bring that one on top so you can see where your seams are and keep going in the same direction on all of them. So now I'm getting ready to do the 3rd row. I'm going to flip it over on top. I'm going to start up here. And I'm going to match this seam right here. I know it's going up, so I'm going to match it going up right there. You could put in pins or clips if you wanted. Here I have the 9 patch and the bar, so I want to make sure those seams are nested nicely. Right there. And then I'm going to stop and I'm going to look at which direction this seam, it's coming towards me. So the one underneath needs to go away from me so that they will nest. And I'm just going to keep adjusting them as I'm sewing. Do I have anything there? I have some seams that I need to make sure go the right direction. So I'll stop there and readjust. Now I'm coming up to another major seam here. It's going up. So I need to pull the one underneath down, nest them up. Here we've got some going down. Make sure that they are nested and the bottom seams are going the appropriate direction. There we go. And our final seam is coming towards me. So I want to make sure this one, oh, see, that's going the wrong way. Flip it so it's going up. Now I'm not flipping it till it gets up in here because right here it's going to catch it and flip it back the wrong way for me. So I'm just doing it a little bit at a time as I go. There we go. And we have just one more seam to go right here, this one. So I'm going to flip this on top again so I can see which way my seams are going. And sew down this direction. Coming towards me. So that one's going up. Oh, I just lost my thread. So let's rethread my needle. Love it when that happens. You'll get to where you can hear your machine change sounds when it loses a thread, which is very helpful. So you can just rethread and you don't end up sewing a long way. Unfortunately, my machine doesn't change sounds when it runs out of bobbin thread. So I've been known to sew a whole quilt border on without thread in my bobbin. You would think with the clear case I would notice it, but you know, you get in a hurry. Get excited because you're down to that last border. Yay, I'm almost done. And then tragedy strikes. Well, okay, that's not tragedy. That's just frustration. All righty. And we keep on going. This one's going up. Oh, nothing below it. This one's coming down, so that underneath one needs to go up. And off we go again. Now, because I started it down here, I need to double check it didn't get flipped going over my little bump. And this one doesn't have anything to match, so I'm just going to match that. It's going to come towards me. See how easy this is? You're doing just little short sections at a time and adjusting as you go, and it keeps everything just really, really straight and easy to press out. And there we go. And that's why I didn't press as I was going, because I wasn't sure which way I wanted my seams going until I got there. Okay, so there's our block. I just have to go back and press it out, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to press from the back so that I can watch these seams here. And I'm going to press these seams first and these seams. Then I'll go back and I will press out these seams one at a time, whichever way they go, the easiest way that they want to go. Like these look like they're wanting to naturally point outwards, so I will just press them outwards. This one looks like it wants to naturally point inwards, so that's what I'll do. And there you go. You have your flying geese going, or your geese on the pond. Also sometimes was called a flying geese, but goose on the pond right there. Congratulations, you did it. Oh, wait a minute. Look at what I did. I got one turned here. That's supposed to be going this way. How did I do that? I don't know. So how are we going to fix that? Do I have to take this whole section apart? I do not. What I need to do is I need to come to this side. Can't believe I did that. I must have picked up my stack funny. Okay, come to this side and pop out every 3 or 4 stitches with your seam ripper. It's real easy to get in behind a flip seam like that and pop one. And pop one there. And that should be enough. Like this. So I'm going to take out this whole block all the way around. So that's one side. I'll take out all 4 sides and I'll come maybe an inch beyond so I have room to redo my seams. I still have that seam there stitched together, so I need to click that apart. See, so now I have this side done. I'm going to take out these 3 sides too. I'll flip it, sew it here, and sew up those sides, and it'll be all perfect. I can't believe I did that. But that's how easy things are to get turned. So if I had been smart, before I sewed up my rows, I would have stopped and analyzed the block real carefully first, caught that, turned it before I sewed my rows together. But I didn't, but it's easy to fix. So no harm, no foul. I'm just going to flip it, turn it, and be done with this block. So hopefully you didn't do the same thing. Congratulations on finishing yours without an error. We will see you next time in my sewing room when we do another really fun block. The next block is going to have to do with flying geese, and we're going to make our flying geese into trees. So join me next week for another fun classic block.